You've seen all the photos, you've saved the reels, but how do you actually turn your Banff bucket list into an amazing, doable itinerary? In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to build your Banff itinerary like a local, plus a few tips to avoid the biggest planning mistakes I see every week. Welcome to the Banff Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Celine Brewer, a local Canmore resident living the mountain life all year long. When I'm not hiking to a new viewpoint, hitting the local mountain bike trails, or skating on frozen lakes in the winter, I'm helping travelers like you plan unforgettable trips to Banff National Park. As co-founder of Banff Travel Planning and Travel Banff Canada, and a fellow traveler who spent years exploring the world with my husband and our 2 kids, I know what it takes to plan a trip that's smooth, stress-free, and full of those wow moments. Let's talk about how to actually build your Banff itinerary. If you're anything like most travelers I work with, you probably have a list of places you want to see, hikes you want to do, and activities you've saved from various blog posts, Instagram, and TikTok. But how do you turn that into a day-by-day plan that flows well while you're here? I want this episode to give you a simple framework to follow, some of my best tips as a local, and a few reminders to make your trip not just Instagram worthy, but actually enjoyable for you. Now you can do this on paper or in a note on your phone, but I've also created some helpful free tools for you. You can grab my Banff Travel Planner and my Banff Cheat Sheets. They're quick downloads and will help you get organized without overthinking it. I'll link to them in the show notes. First, let's talk about travel style. Before you map out anything, be honest with yourself and how you like to travel. Are you the kind of person who wants to pack every day with hikes, tours, and sightseeing from dawn until dusk? Or do you prefer one big activity per day with time to relax, wander around, or enjoy a long lunch with a view? I've worked with so many travelers in my Banff travel consultations who try to cram in too much, who have a long list of things they want to do, but honestly feel relieved and excited about their trip when we build an itinerary that fits their travel style. A good itinerary doesn't mean seeing everything. It means enjoying what you do see. If you need permission to leave some things off your list, here it is. It's okay if you don't see every mountain lake and do every hike. For some of you travelers, your pace of travel might just be different than that of a 20 or 30-year-old who wants to see and do everything. Those of us with kids might find that one big activity or hike is usually enough in a day. We might plan slower mornings or chill afternoons. My kids are early risers, so we try to give them time in the afternoons. When they're younger, it's best for everyone to seek out a playground to stop at, where your kids can just be kids. Short hikes like Johnson Lake or Fenland Trail are great for those little legs, but also knowing your kids and what they can handle, and knowing if they can handle some of those bigger hikes too. Maybe you aren't traveling with kids, but you aren't up for big hikes anymore, or they might just not be your thing. You can focus on scenic drives, gondolas, and short walks. Choose hotels with good walkability to dining and shops. There are plenty of beautiful places around Banff that you don't need to climb steep trails to get to, and activities that aren't hiking, like boat cruises, river floats, afternoon tea, museums, and so many easy walking trails. If you're more adventurous and hiking's just not your thing, I promise you there are tons of activities besides hiking here for you too. So now that we've gotten honest about the type of traveler you are, the first step is to look at your list of things to do and start grouping activities by area. If you don't know where they are, use my Banff cheat sheets as a starting point. Google Maps is also a quick and easy way to figure out distances between locations and where things are. Now, Banff National Park is huge, so if you try to hop between Canmore and Banff multiple times a day, you're just going to waste a lot of time driving. Same goes for between Banff and Lake Louise. Instead, group your activities by the area. Now, here are the main areas I use when I help build itineraries. You have the Banff town site and the surrounding area, so this is going to include things like Vermilion Lakes, Bow Falls, the Cave and Basin, the Banff Gondola, Tunnel Mountain. It will also include the Lake Minnewanka area and even Johnson Canyon and the Bow Valley Parkway. Then we get into the Lake Louise area with Lake Louise, Moraine Lake, the Lake Louise Gondola. Now you can pair those together on one day, or you can split them into 2 days if you want to do a big hike at each. If you're still trying to figure out how much time you need at those lakes, you can head over to episode 10 where I walk you through figuring all of that out. Next, we have the Icefields Parkway. This is a full day on its own, especially if you make all of the stops along the Icefield Parkway and maybe even throw in the Columbia Icefield Adventure with the Ice Explorer and Skywalk. If you're going all the way up to Jasper National Park, you'll want at least one full day in Jasper, but 2 is better or more. Some of the driving distances there are quite long. Between boat cruises, Skytram, hot springs, that's a lot of driving to be doing. Yoho National Park with Emerald Lake and Takaka Falls is right next to Lake Louise and could pair well with that area depending on how much time you're spending at the lakes. Kootenai National Park has Marble Canyon, the Paint Pots, and some really great hikes along Highway 93 South. So this can be on its own for a day, or it can be paired with Johnson Canyon and the Bow Valley Parkway, especially if you're visiting Johnson Canyon early in the morning, like I recommended in episode 12 when I went into the details on the Bow Valley Parkway and Johnson Canyon. Finally, you have Kananaskis and Canmore nearby. Kananaskis is better if you have your own vehicle, but you're going to have amazing scenery and less crowded trails there. Once you've grouped your activities, you'll start to see how your itinerary can flow more naturally. You can also look for activities that you can get to on the way to other activities. For example, Marble Canyon is just a slight detour on Highway 93 South. You'll drive right past the exit to this highway on the way to Lake Louise from Banff. Or you might choose to drive the Bow Valley Parkway on your way to Lake Louise to enjoy a slower, more scenic drive while looking for wildlife. Step 3 is to figure out how many days do you need based on your list of activities and your travel style. If you want to hit all the major areas we listed above, you'll need roughly a day for each, but you can extend this or reduce this depending on the activities you choose or how long the hikes you choose are. If you need to fit it in less days, you can either drop some activities or pack more into a day. Early starts are a great way to do this. For example, you could do Moraine Lake and Lake Louise together, and then also add in Emerald Lake. Since you likely have a shuttle booked for Moraine Lake and Lake Louise, then I'd visit Emerald Lake and Takaka Falls early in the morning, since you don't have to worry about parking for your shuttle, but the parking will get harder and harder to get at Emerald Lake and Takaka Falls. Alternatively, if you want to do a big hike at Lake Louise, you can spend the day around Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, and then visit Emerald Lake much later in the day, even after having dinner in Lake Louise when it gets less busy. Don't forget our days are really long here in the summer. Think sunrises between 5:30 and 6:30 a.m. and sunsets between 9 and 10 p.m. The next step is to balance your big days and easy days. If you're doing a big hike like Plain of Six Glaciers or Larch Valley, give yourself something easier the next day, especially if you aren't a frequent hiker. This could be a day exploring Banff's town site, a boat cruise on Lake Minnewanka, or doing a scenic drive. I also recommend mixing in non-hiking activities like a float tour, canyoning, or horseback riding to give your body a break, but still make the day feel special. You may also want to give yourself a break between big driving days. If you're spending the entire day driving and stopping along the Icefields Parkway, maybe the next day do something closer to your hotel so you aren't in the car so much. Now it's time to refine your plan. Some activities and shuttles are going to fill up quickly, especially in the summer, so you're going to want to get some of those booked. Obviously, your shuttles to Moraine Lake and Lake Louise need to be booked in advance. I wouldn't leave those to chance. Afternoon tea at the Fairmont, Chateau Lake Louise, or Banff Springs is always good to book in advance. Gondola tickets, especially if you're trying to go during peak times of the day. And then popular tours like the Ice Explorer or rafting trips, or even if you're planning a family photo session. I also recommend only having one scheduled activity in a day because you need to leave room for the unexpected or allowing yourself to spend more time in a place that you really enjoy. And that's the next step, leaving room for the unexpected and not scheduling everything to the minute. Maybe the weather shifts, maybe you discover a viewpoint you love and want to stay longer, or maybe you need a little downtime. Always leave a bit of flex time, especially on longer trips. It gives you the freedom to chase the experiences that surprise you once you're here. So let's talk about a few mistakes I see all the time, both in my Facebook group and during some of the consultations that I do. Trying to do too much in a day or even in your trip. Driving from Banff to Jasper and back in one day, well, yes, it's possible, and yes, some people do it. It's going to be exhausting and is going to feel more like checking things off a list instead of actually taking it in. Not having a plan B or a plan C, Banff isn't a place where you can just wing it anymore. You need a backup if parking is full or if your kids aren't up for a big hike. When I do my Banff travel consultations and in my Banff itineraries, I always give other options, like 2 to 3 different hiking options or a non-hiking option, so you can see how you feel that day. I never expect itineraries to be followed to the T. I don't expect them to be followed hour by hour, but want you to have flexibility when you're here and during the day. So it's always good to have a plan B or a plan C, not only for parking lots being full, but also depending on how everyone is feeling that day. And also so you know what is around that same area and you can make those choices and make the day yours and exactly the way you want to travel. Another mistake I see is spending too much time in the car. Yes, you're going to need to do a lot of driving to see all the places. But don't forget to add in a morning or afternoon of just a fun outdoor adventure like a via ferrata or canyoning or float on the river or cycling the Bow Valley Parkway. If you're able to, these activities may seem like they're going to take up so much time, but they're so worth it. They add a deeper element to your trip instead of just taking off one more place. Now, I have a ton of ideas for these non-hiking activities that I'll link to the show notes, but this also applies to getting out and doing a nice long hike instead of just going from your car to a viewpoint after viewpoint after viewpoint. So how would I build different length itineraries? Here's what I would do. If you only have a day or two in Banff, you're limited. I think it's worthwhile to pick one area and go a little bit deeper into that area. You could spend one day around the Banff town site, take in the Banff gondola, and maybe do one of the great hikes that you can access right from the town of Banff. If you have a second day in there, add in Lake Louise and Moraine Lake. Maybe do a canoe on Lake Louise or a tea house hike and the nice lakeshore walk at Moraine Lake. If you have 3 or 4 days in the area, you can still spend a day exploring the Banff town site, then spend 1 day at Lake Louise and Moraine Lake. Maybe you can throw in a day just for the Icefields Parkway. And then on your final day, do something a little closer to the town of Banff. Maybe it's the Lake Minnewanka area, or maybe you spend a day in the town of Canmore. If you're lucky enough to have 5 or 7 days or even more, then you can do all of the highlights and start layering in some of the lesser known hikes or fun experiences like rafting or a via ferrata, or maybe even just a rest day or a day at the spa. More time is really going to let you absorb the place and take in the scenery you came here to see. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I understand. I hear it all the time. People are overwhelmed with how much there is to do and how many different areas there are to explore, which is why I created a few itineraries that you can easily just download and use instantly. They're built by a local, by me, and they give you a day-by-day plan with the exact hikes, timing ideas, what you need to book for that day, and some restaurant options. And everything's grouped by area, so you aren't doing any unnecessary driving. Each one is designed around a different type of trip. Maybe you're only here for 3 days, so I have the 3-day see it all itinerary. If you really love hiking, check out my 5-day hiking itinerary for Banff. If you have longer time, I have both a 7 or a 10-day Banff and Jasper road trip itinerary. And if you're traveling without a car, I have one for that too. They're not just checklists. They're not just points on a map. They're how I'd plan the trip if I were doing it myself. That also include daily options based on how you're feeling for that day. I'll drop a link to those in the show notes. And a few final tips before you get to building your itinerary. Don't overplan. You don't need to fill every minute. You're here to see the scenery. Take it in. Prioritize how you want to feel on this trip. Do you want to be active? Would you prefer relaxed or adventurous? Obviously, you want to keep watching Facebook groups or Instagram for any last-minute inspiration, but don't feel like you need to do everything. Most of all, build the trip for you. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Banff Travel Podcast. If you got value from this episode, do me a favor. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss the next one. It's free, it helps the show, and it keeps you in the loop. If you'd like to support the podcast, I now have a page where you can say thanks, send a tip, or grab one of my downloadable guides. You'll find it at travelbanffcanada.com/support. And I appreciate every single bit of support. It helps me keep this going where I can help travelers like you make the most of their trip to the Canadian Rockies without the stress or overwhelm. If you have a question you'd like me to answer in a future episode, head to banfftravelplanning.com/podcast and send it in. Until next time, happy trip planning, and I'll see you out on the trails.